what if I were to tell you that there were 5 things that you were doing that were making your comic harder, and if you stopped doing them, then it'll feel like a weight being lifted from your shoulders? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you those 5 things so you can leave them in 2024, fly out of the gate in 2025, and get closer to completing your comic. And you'll feel better about the process too. I'm John, and I help people complete their comics without burning out, and let's get to that first one. Number 1, you're doing too much. You want to create an amazing comic. Hell, you want to create an entire universe. And you want to grow your audience on social media, and hey, this guy has an email list, so I should do that too. And this guy has a Discord server, so I should start that. Oh, and there's Patreon and Ko-fi and Subscribestar. Also, I have my other side projects as well, like the podcast that I'm making, all these illustrations, or all of this fan art, and that board game I'm designing. Chances are you're not doing literally all of these, but if you are, please let me know in the comments, because scientists are going to want to study you. You may not be doing them all, but you're still probably taking on too much that's having a negative impact on your comic. If you're a comic creator, then the comic has to be the beating heart of everything that you do. Without the comic, the social media, the email newsletter, the Patreon, the Discord, none of that matters. And a lot of us look at those external factors as if they're helping serve our comics, but they're not. They take time and energy away from our comic creations, and it's our comics that serve them. So until you've finished your comic, don't worry too much about them. It's not that you can't have social media and all that other stuff. It's that if you do, don't allow them to sap the energy and time away from you creating your comic. Number 2, you're comparing yourself with others. I've spoken about this before, and you've almost certainly heard it before. You shouldn't compare yourself with other artists, and only focus on yourself is stuff that I and many others have said. You might have even said it to someone else. But do we listen? No. Now, I want to make it clear that comparing yourself with others is different than getting inspiration from others. Being inspired is looking at another piece of art and thinking, I want nothing more than to be creating my comic right now. When I watch artists make their comic on YouTube, it makes me want to sit down and create alongside them. That's inspiring. Comparing yourself to others, on the other hand, is looking at another artist and doing nothing but thinking negatively of your own work. Why can't I draw like them? Or I'll never get to that level, or my comic is awful in comparison to theirs. That's when it becomes harmful. You have to promise that you will not speak negatively about yourself or your comic publicly in 2025. Because it's not motivational, you don't need that sort of tough love, and that's the wrong sort of pressure to apply to yourself. The only thing that saying stuff like that will do is start making you believe that it's actually true. And if you believe it to be true, then it's going to take a long time to convince you otherwise. So when you look at other people's work and you start to find yourself thinking negatively about your own work, then you need to catch yourself, stop doing that, and do something else instead. I do it all the time, and whenever I find myself thinking, I need to redraw my entire comic but using this guy's style because it's awesome, which is exactly what I've done in the past, I'll stop myself and just do something else. Number 3, destroying your old work. One of my biggest regrets in my art life is that I didn't save nearly as much as my old work as I wish I had done. I can't find the majority of the stuff that I've done beyond a few years ago because I either deleted it or threw it in the bin. And I did that because I didn't rate it very highly and I didn't think that it held any value. But one of the best things that you can do for your future self is to keep your current work, because it's going to serve you so well in a year or two. Remember, you are definitely going to compare yourself to other artists, despite the fact that you know it's a bad thing, and you're also going to speak negatively of your own work at some point. Maybe you've already done that today. And most of us don't need that much of an invitation to be overly critical about our own work. Most artists are their own worst critics. But if you keep all of your old artwork, it gives you one of the most valuable things in life: evidence. Because unless you make like 1 or 2 drawings per year, you're going to see a noticeable improvement from years 1 to 2 and beyond. And for most of us, looking at our old work and seeing where we are currently puts everything in perspective, and it shows that we are moving in the right direction. And even if you look at your stuff from a year or 2 years ago and you genuinely don't believe that you've improved, then it's not a skill issue that you have, it's a learning issue. I know selling courses isn't very popular, and don't worry, I don't have a course to sell you yet. But if you are in that position, maybe a short course is the shot in the arm that you need. Because a lot of us feel that we need to go on this journey alone, and we don't. We all need help, and artists shouldn't see that as a bad thing. We need someone to show us the right path sometimes, or to give us a little bit of encouragement, and accepting that isn't a weakness, it's a strength. So keep your art. It shows where you've been, where you are, and where you are going. Number 4, freaking out over potential. This is something that I don't see being talked about that much. When you're creating your comic, do your fingers and wrist hurt after a while? Chances are it's not the pen that you're using, it's that you're too tense while you're creating. I broke my old Cintiq, and if I still had it, I'd show you the number of really bad scratches that are on it because I was pushing too hard with the pen while I was drawing. Now, Cintiqs and tablets are supposed to have little scratches on them, so if yours does, it's probably fine. But the reason that I was digging my pen into the tablet was because I was feeling too tense. And it's worth taking note of how tense you are while you're creating, because it's not just your gear that you will save. Your back, neck, jaw, your entire body is going to start aching if you tense up for too long while you're drawing. So why do we tense up? We tense up for the most part for pretty much the same reason. We freak out over potential mistakes we're going to make. Now, the biggest cure for this is experience, but you can't gain experience immediately, so what else can you do? Now, I'm not that big into meditation, but you should try it and see if it vibes with you. It's basically all about breathing, which is what I do. Just 1 or 2 big deep breaths before I start. In fact, when I'm live streaming, I'll do this quite often because while I'm drawing and live streaming at the same time, I tend to forget to breathe. Does anyone else do that? Another thing that we can do is a little bit more difficult than just breathing. We have to make peace with who we are today as artists. We have to be present, which actually that's what meditation's about as well, isn't it? Maybe I am into meditation. Anyway, we tend to be overly hard on ourselves and expect way too much from ourselves all the time. And it's a habit that we collectively need to get out of. What would you say to a friend who is about to work on their comic for the evening? Or what would you say if they're halfway through working on their page and you peer over their shoulder to see what they're doing? Would you tell them that they're probably going to screw up that page or that their work is getting worse? No, of course not. And if you do, how do you have friends? So don't do it to yourself. There's a time and place for being critical of your work and actively trying to improve your knowledge and skills, but it's not while you're creating your comic. While you're creating, focus on your breathing and try and relax as much as possible as you're making your comic. Not only will this stop you from ruining your gear and your body, but it'll actually start making your art feel like it has more life. Because when you draw while tense, your art comes out tense, stiff, and lifeless. So chill out, basically. Number 5, neglecting your non-art life. This last one is similar to number 4, but we need to look at the bigger picture for a minute. Before I get into this, I'm not telling you how to live. You do you. But I'm still going to talk about the things that are responsible for you creating your art. And if you haven't figured this out yet, that thing is you. Your mind, body, and experiences are collectively responsible for you creating the art and telling the stories that you want to tell. And so we're going to do a quick MOT of all 3 of those things to make sure that you're in fighting shape to create your comic to the best of your current abilities. I do this every few months and I'm going to do it at the start of January as well, and it helps me a lot. First, the mind. Is your sleep good? Are you getting the recommended amount, and is it good quality sleep? Do you read or listen to audiobooks? Do you consume other artworks and learn new techniques? Are you managing your stress levels? How organized are you? Personally, my comic creation was pretty inconsistent until I made a planner. I know a lot of people bristle at the idea of planning because it seems boring and non-arty, but it was a game changer for me. Stimulating your mind with useful or interesting knowledge and getting the recommended amount of sleep each night is what's going to keep your mind sharp and your energy levels up so you can create your comic consistently. What about the body? Do you stretch before and during your comic creation sessions? Do you stand up and walk about every so often, or are you stuck to your desk for hours on end? Do you eat junk food all day, or is your diet more balanced? Do you exercise at all? Treating your body with respect will allow you to create your comic for much longer periods of time, and as a result, you're going to be significantly more productive. One of the main reasons to use the Pomodoro technique while you're creating is to give you those 5-minute breaks so that you can stand up and walk and stretch before diving back into your comic. And you might think that that's a 5-minute distraction that you don't need, but trust me, it helps a lot, especially as you approach your 30s or 35. And finally, experiences. It can be pretty easy to tie up our own identity with what we do or what we want to do. We want to be comic creators, so spending any time not doing that seems like a waste of time. But if you neglect your relationships with those closest to you, then it's going to have a negative impact on your comic and your art, because it's going to have a negative impact on your mind. And when the mind is feeling bad, the body usually suffers. and your art will definitely suffer. Plus, there's huge benefits to you as a comic creator if you embrace experience outside of comics. Going for a walk can inspire ideas for your next scene or book or character. You don't have to bungee jump or swim with dolphins or do anything extreme at all. But spending quality time away from your comics and your computer and the internet can help stimulate your creativity so that when you come back to creating your comics, you're creating with more confidence and more passion. Now, for the introverted among us, I'm not saying that we have to go out and mingle with people, but I am saying that we should make a concerted effort for being more present around our loved ones and the people who care about us. Don't get me wrong, doom scrolling is fine every now and then, and so is watching trash TV. Eating chocolate and pizza is also fine, and spending all night playing video games is also fine. I'm not going to demonize any of those things because I do pretty much all of them. You don't have to go to the extreme and try and improve every aspect of your life all at once, because that's mental. There's a lot in this video that I've listed that I don't currently do that I'd like to do at some point. And my plan for next year is to make a list and split it into these 3 categories: mind, body, and experiences. And then I'm going to pick one of those things from each of those categories and I'm going to focus on it for a month. So if I pick sleep for mind, exercise for body, and walks with my wife and daughter for experiences, then that seems like a pretty achievable thing that I can do consistently. That might mean consistent bed and wake times for a month, counting my calories for a month, and carving out time in my calendar so that I can go to the local park or nature walks with my fam. I know I'm sounding like one of those health guru kind of people, and I hear it too, but the overarching point of this is that if you're neglecting your non-art life, then your art life is going to suffer. And you can't create more art to work your way out of that. Sometimes you have to stop, breathe, and take care of you. Your comics will always wait for you. It's up to you whether you take any of this on or whether you feel that I'm full of crap. Both opinions are valid. Because there's a lot more than what I've mentioned in this video that could be holding you back as a comic creator. And you can't always trust what people say online. In fact, one of the biggest vulnerabilities for new comic creators is that they can't distinguish bad advice from good advice. And to find out whether you've received any bad advice online, then watch this video next because I did some digging and I found a lot.